Hello Internet, welcome back to our voxel terrain. In this video we are going to be actually texturing things. I've brought in three surface, no they're not surface, substance materials. So these are a little bit different than your normal materials. They're actually created in a program called Substance and then brought into Unity. And so one of the cool things about them is, unlike a normal texture, these ones can actually be changed. You can see there's a whole bunch of parameters here that we can change. And actually, if I change that, like increase the rock amount here, there's a whole tree or graph actually behind the scenes that actually controls each of these effects. And so you can see it regenerates our texture and we get a little bit more rocks. If I increase their size, it'll change again. And so you can keep changing that over and over until you get something you like. Just removed all of our cracks from our ground. So anyway, that's what a substance gives you. These are just three free ones that I pulled from their website. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be removing our booleans right now. So all of these values, they're all boolean values. It's either there is a position here, or there is something here, or there isn't. That's going away. We want to instead say, is there something there? And if it is, what is it? So I think what we're going to do is we're going to replace all of our voxels. We're going to take out the booleans and replace them with ints. And that way, we'll say 0 is going to be empty, and then 1 is going to be something, and 2 is going to be something, and 3 is going to be something. I brought in 3 because I believe the easiest place to start is probably just to have each color, so R, G, and B, have each of those represent a fading between each of these. And then if we need to fade it, we can do that. And then we can just set the vertex color of each of our generated models to actually hold that. So there's a little bit of work we have to do pretty much across the entire project to get this working. We'll need to create a shader. The shader should be relatively straightforward, but we'll have to do some modifications of our data structures and things like that. So I think we can get started. So what we need is we have a quad tree component. We can pull this out and change it into a integer quad tree. We're not using any special data types here. We're not using like a voxel data type, and that's more because I don't think that's a good idea than because it'll make things easy. Oh, so there's nothing stopping us from doing that. It's just then it becomes harder to use in other places, and it's harder to actually reference that. If we start representing this in like complex data types, if we end up passing this to our shader, it's not easy to understand. This we can index into, which makes it relatively easy to understand. So we've got our private everything. It should all be integers. So that should be good. We've got our sphere inserter. I'm going to change this to be a public int value, and we'll initialize that to 1. And so this value is going to be what we're actually going to be inserting. So instead of true here, we're going to insert our value, and then we'll keep our delete, and that'll just be 0. Well, this isn't going to work anymore. I'll stop that. We also need to modify our quad mesh creator. So this is going through and saying where our node.data is something. That doesn't work anymore. We need to say it's greater than or equal to or greater than 0. No, it's not equal to 0. That works. Sure. So that will generate a mesh if there's not 0 there. And I think we can also update this really quickly. So this will be 0. This will be value. This is just our quad tree pencil. We're not using this right now. And we might actually pull it out, but I'll update it for now. So we'll give it a value just so it all works and initialize it to 1. That way we're not deprecating anything we don't need to. So once we fix all of our compile errors, everything should be good. We're inserting into a circle with the wrong thing. We want to insert, I'm just going to say 1 for now. So we're going to insert a constant value of 1 instead of inserting something else. So we can start this, and we can actually move around, and everything still works. We're just using an integer now. So it's all the same. I can change its value to 0, and now when I would normally be drawing, it's actually erasing. I can change it to 2 and insert back into it. There's no visible difference between the 2s and the 1s. That will come later. So what should we do next? Let's, in our quad mesh creator, let's set up the colors. How do we do this? So I haven't done this in a long time, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, so we can set the colors, which means we need another list. Oops. There we go. So that'll set the colors. So every vertex in your program can have a color assigned to it, and that's what we're going to do. Actually, is there a way to set just a random value? No. Okay, so you can't assign. If we could have assigned just an integer value, I think I would have preferred that. We can use colors. It's not going to stop us. But yeah. All right, we're going to use colors, I guess. We're going to need to create it, which means a new list of colors. Is that how that works? Seems to. Okay. And then we need to insert a new color for every vertex in our mesh, which means we need to do 3colors.add, and we're going to insert that for the value. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to make a map up here, and we're going to just make it a private read-only color array. And so this is going to be based off of the index that we're using for our voxels. And this is going to be our voxel color codes. And so what we're going to do is create a new color array, and then we're going to stick the actual colors we want in here. So if for our 0, doesn't really matter. We're going to do it, well, actually, I think there's already hard-coded colors, so we'll just use those. So we use clear if it's nothing, and then we'll use red, green, and then blue, so RGB. And this means if we're using our 3 different textures, if red is the primary color, well, actually, we can just fade the textures based on this value. So if we normalize this vector, the RGB there, we should be able to actually get the color, or the fading, I guess, of each of the textures. We can add those together, and then that will be our result. I imagine, just because of the way we're generating this, that there won't be any fading. It'll either be solid red, solid blue, or solid green. And we'll be able to test that actually really shortly. So we've got our colors, and then all we need to do is do our voxel color codes, and then just look up our leaf data. So we can just do a straight lookup into that table we made, and just do that 3 times, and that will give us our answer. Nothing too fancy there. So that should actually more or less be everything we need. The only thing I am going to switch is I'm going to use this rock texture we had, and I'm actually going to use a, what do we want to use, a vertex lit shader? no, we'll use an alpha blended shader, and I'm going to not give it any default texture, and then increase all of these so it's just flat white. If we assign this onto our voxel material, the particles should already have vertex coloring. So I was expecting that to be red. That's not, It's not doing what I thought it would do. I was, so, I I don't know what the problem with that is. I was expecting, based on our quad mesh, we've added the colors. Those should be there. And it should be the proper value. Yeah, that's kind of weird. What if we, for one of them, I'm just going to insert color.red. And that is just a sanity check. There's nothing particular about that. Because I would expect it to, when it's regenerating this, I would expect one of those points to be red all the time. It's not, so I think we've done something wrong. Either that, or they've magically changed the particle thing and it's not looking up. Well, that was wrong. Don't do that. Let's see. Particles, soft, that's still not right. Well then, I don't know what's wrong here. That should have set the color, and so I would expect it to look it up. Since it's not, we're doing something wrong. So we set our mesh, we have our colors, those are good. Let's just, let's move on. We'll write our shader, because why not? It's going to have to happen anyway. And then we'll come back to this. I imagine it might come out in testing. So I'm going to just create a new standard surface shader, and we're going to call it our, good question, our voxel. Do we want to call it our terrain shader? Yeah. Because I'm imagining this is probably going to be more practical for terrains than anything else. So we'll just label it as needing terrains. The next thing I'm going to do is we are going to want a color. So I'm going to add a color as our input and give it the label of color. What this does is anything with this color label in your inputs is going to include the vertex color. So what I'm saying is this should have our vertex color that we specified in our last thing, the thing that wasn't working. We're supposed to be using that now. So in here, we should be able to do a in.color, and that should be our albedo. So our albedo color, the color we're going to display, is going to be coming from our vertexes. So theoretically, oops, that's not going to work, because we need to assign it to our material. So I'll create a new one just quickly, because why not? This will be our terrain material. We're going to do custom voxel terrain. Sure. Got our quad tree. Assign that material, go over things and build it. It's still not working. It is being assigned. Our material is assigned here. But I'm wondering if it's not being assigned to. We can check that, because I can take this. Let's select a random. Well, actually, we already have some fairly complex shaders, so let's use one of those. And it works. Okay. So it is assigning the proper shader and it is using it, or it's assigning the proper material and using it. So that's not our problem. Something else is we're not able to get our vertex color. Or rather, we're not able to set our vertex color. So I think we need to start by looking at our mesh creator. This is the only thing that can be wrong, just because it's the only thing that's doing anything. Oh. I don't think we were inserting enough. We've got 4 vertices. Yeah, 4 vertices, 2 triangles. I was looking at the wrong thing. So we probably were misaligning something and it was just breaking. No? Okay. Color me confused. Because I would have thought that would have done it. Obviously not. So let's throw our rock back on there. That's going to have our particles. And this is just, I know particles have an alpha or have a vertex color. That's how all the color changing works in your particles. Ah, okay. So it is working now. That was our problem, which means our shader is broken. So we can actually color things now. The reason you're getting that red in the upper left is because we have that hard-coded red value for testing, but we can actually color things, override things, etc. And one of the important things to note is it doesn't collapse our quad tree now, even if there's voxels there. So right here, it's not collapsed, even though there's no empty terrain, which is good. That means our algorithm is working as expected. So, since we know that's working, we can switch back to our terrain material. And then, what do we need to do? We need to go here and revert this change, because that was wrong. And then we should be able to create this. It should be all red. It's not, so something's broken. One sec. Let me make sure I did our shader correct. Oh. Ha, it didn't save. Fixed it. Okay. Now that that's working, that's great, because I can do stuff like this. So we've got green. We'll put a little blue down here. Now what we want is I want to actually go over all of this and actually insert textures for this. So how are we going to do that? We need three of these. So instead of our main texture, we're going to have layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3. And this is just going to be our, it's going to represent each of the textures that we're going to use. So layer 2 is going to be for the greens, layer 1 is for the reds, layer 3 is for the blues. So we'll give each of those that, and then we need to replace it down here. So we actually have a variable in our shader that can accept things. So do layer 2, layer 3. We've got all of that. And then what do we want? We don't need a tint. I don't think that makes any sense in the case of what we're doing. So I'm going to pull that out. And then I'm going to do 3 texture lookups. We only need a 1 UV coordinate for this. So it doesn't matter which of our textures we use, but you do need to specify a UV coordinate. This kind of saves you some shader inputs. There is a limit on these. You can't have, I forget the number, I think it's 12, 16 or something like that. So if we wanted to have separate tiling values for each of these, we could provide that through this. So I could do UV layer 2, UV layer 3, and that would get us the UVs for each of those. The problem with that is that now there's 3 different values there. If we want to reduce that, you just take it off. And so what I'm talking about is in our terrain material, you'll see there's this tiling and this offset. Those are what we're importing when we get the UV values. So by doing what I did, changing this isn't going to actually change anything. I can have that set to anything I want. Same with the offsets for these. That's not going to matter because we're only taking our UV coordinates from our R, and then we're using it to look up the position in each of the textures. So with that, we need to actually do something like this in order to get our UVs, our positions rather. And then we can just do the layers there. So what this does is it gets the color of each of them. Then what I want to do is calculate the normalized vector. So we're going to have a fixed 3 of our smoothing value. I don't know if that's a good name for it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take the RGB value from our color. We don't care about the alpha right now. If we did want to, we could use that as a 4th value. Or we could do like some like semi-transparent things or whatever. I'm not going to worry about that because that's somewhere else. So we need to normalize this, and that's just going to get us a unit vector, which means we're not going to have like, say if I provided white, in the context of what we're going to be doing where we're mixing these 3 colors, it doesn't really make sense to do 1, 1, and 1 and then add those together. If we normalize them, we get a third of each, and that makes far more sense. So that's just sort of guarding against any weird errors of when you have actually setting the color. There's no other advantage there. And then what we want to do is calculate a color. So I'm going to do a fixed 3, and that is going to give us a color. So our color is going to be equal to L1 times our smoothing value dot R, and then we can just add that and do it 2 more times for each of the smoothing values. So that'll be 3 and blue, and then for 2 we want to do green, and that's just mapping straight to RGB. So the final formula is going to look something like this. I'm just going to add parentheses just to prevent any stupid mistakes when I go back to this. But we should get something like that. And then we can just apply the color here. So this won't take in anything else. It's not going to allow us to provide, say, a height map or a normal map or any of that. I have some other ideas on how to actually fix that, but we're not there yet. So, ooh, that's wrong. I didn't save again. No, I did. What? Confused. Oh, never mind. No, I'm not. So the problem that we're having right now is our textures are fully white. And so what happened is we had red, green, and blue. No, that doesn't make any sense. Hold on. No, that doesn't work. I have done something else. We're going to apply our concrete, I think, and then we'll do our ground, and then we'll do, I have ice here somewhere. There we go. So we have 3 colors here, all based on our vertex color. So I should be able to use this and not get red. We're still getting red. Terrain material, yes. That's kind of weird. Why would we get... So we do our terrain, we do our texture lookup. We've got our smoothing value, which is our smooth color. Then we have the actual color we want to apply, which looks correct. And then we apply that as our albedo. So why doesn't it work? That's a good question. Because it doesn't make sense for it all to be red. Because that leads me to believe that it is taking its value directly from the vertex color, which I don't want to happen. That shouldn't be what we're doing. So what would cause that to happen? I don't know. That's a bad answer, but it's the one I have. Because it doesn't make much sense to me why... No, it doesn't make any sense why we would be getting the vertex color out of this function. I have screwed something up. Don't yell at me if it's obvious, because it's not. Shoot. It can't be that hard. Color, RGB, RGB. Okay. I'm gonna prove I'm not crazy. We're gonna take L1 straight out of there and use that as our material. What? Hold on. Oh. Yeah. So, for the past 5 minutes, our shader has not been compiling. Oops. Problem with that is, I thought it was. So that alpha here, and that was the problem. We were trying to access our C.A, and there's only 3 values in it, RGB. There's no 4th element in that, and that was causing it to break. So it wasn't compiling, and that was causing it not to update. Well, that seems obvious now, but I was a little bit hasty. So we now have this. if I select our quad tree, I should be able to insert, oops, we're in our scene, that's wrong, but I can insert some other types. I can also go insert some like ice there. And so we get 3 different types of materials here, which that's sort of what we were going for. So I think that's working out pretty well. So the issue we don't, I don't know how you guys want to do this. This may work for like if you're going for like a Minecraft style. I'm kind of picturing more of a smoothing look. So I was very particular in the materials I chose because I wanted ones with height maps, so we can actually blend them together. We can't do that right now, but we will. And that may come after we start optimizing this and doing some other stuff. I don't think we'll get there now because there's a few more steps to do before we get that far. But what we have should already smooth things out when we start optimizing our mesh. So eventually these will slowly start merging together. And initially admittedly that's not going to look great, but it will fix that over time. So I think that's it for now. We'll pick it up soon and try to get some mesh optimization going and hopefully finally get to marching squares. That'll be interesting because I don't know how well it's going to work in our quad tree. I've been trying to figure out if that's going to work and how that's going to work. I'm still not sure about that. So if you have any ideas, let me know. I'd love to hear them. If you've got feedback as well, I'd like to hear that as well. Don't comment too harshly about making sure my code is compiling because oops. Yeah. But that's it for now. So until next time, see you, Internet.